Our first reading is from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 13 through chapter 5, verse 1. Page 167 in your pew Bible, if you would like to follow that. We have the same spirit of faith, according as it is written. I believed, and therefore have I spoken. We also believe, and therefore speak, knowing that he which raised up the Lord Jesus shall raise up us also by Jesus, and shall present us with you. For all things are for your sakes, that the abundant grace might, through the thanksgiving of many, redound to the glory of God. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man cherish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, and a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens.
Please pray with me. God, who speaks to us, who whispers to us, who does marvelous things for our eyes to see, we ask that you now silence every voice within us but your own, and startle us with your truth. Amen. The scripture reading, the Old Testament scripture reading today comes from Samuel, and it starts in verse 8. When Samuel became old, so this varies a little bit from what you have in your bulletin because I'm starting at the first verse for Samuel instead of the fourth one, if you're following along. When Samuel became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn son was Joel, and the name of his second, Abijah. And they were judges. Yet his sons did not follow his ways, but turned aside after gain. They took bribes and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "You're old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Appoint for us then a king to govern us, like all other nations." But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to govern us." Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they haven't rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them, just as they have done to me from the day I brought them up out of Egypt to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So also they are doing to you. Now then, listen to their voice only. You shall solemnly warn them and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them." So Samuel reported all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "Okay, these will be the ways of your king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots and to be his horsemen and to run before his chariots. He will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and some to plow his ground and some to reap his harvest, and to make his implements of war and the equipment of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his couriers. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers. He will take your male and female slaves and the best of your cattle and donkeys and put them to work. He will take 1/10 of your flock, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you to that day. If you will fear the Lord and serve him and heed his voice and not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, and if both you and the king who reigns over you will follow the Lord your God, it will be well. But if you will not heed the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandments, then the hand of the Lord will be against you and your king. Now therefore take your stand and see this great thing that the Lord will do before your eyes. So there's kind of a lot going on in the passage, and I think it would make a really good either reality show or like a soap opera, because Samuel becomes such a major figure in the Bible. And remember, we talked about, does anybody remember who was the mother of Samuel? Yes, David? Hannah, yes, Hannah, right? And Hannah wanted a child very badly, right? And so she had prayed for years and years and years, and she almost practically lived in the temple. And she had said, God, if you give me a son, I will give him to the church. And she got a son, and she gave him to Eli, who was the priest of the temple. And then when Samuel was a child, that's where he lived. And then, there's that story we hear a lot where Samuel is sleeping, and he really disturbs Eli, who is very elderly and would just prefer to sleep in peace. Because Samuel hears a voice, and he goes to Eli and saying, hey, Eli, 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 did you call me? I'm right here. And Eli says, I didn't call you. And so he goes back to bed, right? And this happens a couple of times until Samuel realizes that, or Eli realizes that this is God calling Samuel. One of the things that's very interesting about the Hebrew people is how they started. Has anybody have a guess about that? Kind of the origins, where they came from or anything? You'll all be ready to go to seminary after, probably next year, right? So the major thought in scholarship is that they came out of the group of Canaanites, because they all lived in the same area together, the archaeological stuff that they found. And so they were kind of a small group of people who had developed this faith system that was different than everybody else around them, because everybody else around them worshiped many gods. And this group had come to the belief that there was only one God. And as they begin to descend from Canaan, they started their journey. And my Old Testament professor used to say, the most miraculous thing in the Bible, according to her, was not all of these other, the parting of the sea, the this, the that, the whatever, but the fact that this small group of people who, for a very, very long time, never really had a home, continued to survive. And they are still surviving today. And given everything we read, that's pretty amazing, right? So this is the background of Samuel's ancestors and how all this came to be. And so Samuel now, in our story, has grown up. He is a judge, which means he was also a military leader, and also a prophet. So he was someone, if somebody needed to hear the voice of the Lord, they would go to Samuel. Also, up until this point, they had never had a king because they got their words directly from Yahweh, or I am, right? Those are those 4 letters that we have that are not translatable. So we just sort of sound out the letters to get some kind of name. But the only translation we have is I am. So whenever I've read that, I always think, how frustrating when you go to try to figure out God's name and all you get is I am. Who wants that for a name? And like, how do you spell it? I-A-M silent E, or I-A-M silent whatever letter you want to put on there. I am. So, but they had been fortunate that they could hear directly from God's self. They could hear directly from God. There was not another person that they had to go through. They had a direct connection. So why the heck would you want to trade that and have a king over you? Also because they had already, at this point, lived in Egypt and been delivered from Egypt. And I don't know, I think they were a lot like us. And some of us have short-term memories that aren't so great. And they may have forgotten what it was like in Egypt when they were slaves under Pharaoh, who was a king. Because now they're saying, we want a king, we want a king. And Samuel says, no, you don't, no, you don't. And they say, yes, we do, yes, we do. All the other groups of people have kings, and they go into battles, and they win, and we want a king, we want a king. And Samuel's like, you don't, you don't. And so Samuel goes and prays, and God just says, well, okay then, we'll give them a king, but here's all the things this king is going to do. And he tells them. And in some ways that reminds me of if you ever look up a particular medicine online and it starts with something like side effects, like fatigue, and then it goes all the way down to like death or a tumor, you know? So, except that this was, what God was saying, how this relationship would turn out. And if I was one of those people, I'd be like, I think I can do without a king. Yeah, that sounds awfully miserable to me. Whew. And the whole thing about, being slaves and having my grain taken and all that stuff, like, there was nothing good in there. There was nothing that they would get that was good from having that king. But yet, they coveted a king because that grass in the desert looked so much better on the other side than it did to them in their circumstances. And when I read that, I try not to be judgmental because I certainly have my own faults. But I just want to say, what are you thinking? And I know you don't know Israelites because you didn't have it all written down for you, but I know the end of this and it doesn't turn out well. But they get a king. Does anybody know who the king is that they get? Saul? Yes, that is correct. You should go on Jeopardy. Yeah. I'm serious. Anyway, so yes, they get a person named Saul. And in the beginning, Saul was a pretty good king. Right? They're kind of in that like honeymoon stage, with having a king. The Philistines at this point were the group that was giving them the most trouble. They wanted the Philistines gone. But it wasn't working so well. But the king was convinced that it would. And the whole time, I just imagine Samuel going from standing and saying, no, you don't, to then kind of leading like, you don't. Until Samuel's like this and practically lying down going, you really don't want a king, you really don't want a king. because Samuel tried to fight that the whole way, and they never listened. So, they coveted a king, and now they had one, and they no longer heard directly from Yahweh, because the king was supposed to represent the voice of God. And whenever I read that, I'm thinking, oh, darn, you want to give that up? You have direct communication with God. And you want to give that up just because it seems a good idea because everyone else has a king and they're winning their battles? But you don't want Yahweh to go before you because you've been fighting a lot of other battles. But they wanted a king, and they got it. So what are some things you think that people may covet, or that's such a churchy word, but may enthusiastically want to have that someone else has?
All kinds of material stuff, money, cars,
Yeah.
$38,000 stereo system.
Yeah. Is that in my office yet?
We're negotiating.
We're working on it. Got it. Good. Good. Yes, Carol? Uh-huh. So let me see if I've got you right. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm gonna just restate what you've said, and then you tell me if I missed it. Okay, if I didn't get it right. So,
But you seem like you were quite sure whether people rejected God. I'm just saying it's human nature. It's just human nature.
sure.
And the more he did for them, the more they felt obligated, probably.
Yes.
I don't know. People want to think that they're in charge.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And so Carol is saying, due to our totally depraved nature, which is part of Reformed theology, it's part of Reformed theology that we believe. We believe that we cannot be good without God, that we need God in our lives to fully be good. You can agree with it or disagree with it, it's fine. But that's what's in there. And so Carol was talking about how people willfully will reject God. And that's true. We can see that all the way through the story of the Israelites. And it seems easy to, for me anyway, to judge them sometimes and be like, oh, you silly Israelites, you went and did it again and started worshiping other gods. Why would you do that? It was very clear. It was very clear in the Ten Commandments. I mean, it's in there, right there. So clear. And then sometimes God says, oh, Tara, what about this? I'm like, you know what? I'm picking on the Israelites right now, so leave me alone. It's not about me. So, what are some things that you might think of, some situations where the grass looks a whole lot greener? What's that?
Greener on the other side.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, David?
Oh, well, when you're living in a particular kind of house and you look at more expensive kinds of houses, you think, boy, I'll be happier if I get a more expensive, bigger house. But then you may discover that it's not.
Property tax goes up, all sorts of things, right? Homeowners association, poof, right? Might not be as easy as it seems. Sometimes I think it may happen with jobs that not for me, but when we're doing certain jobs of some kind and we look at what other people are doing, we think, oh, if I just had that job, like I could do it. When probably the job you're currently doing is where you need to be. Possibly, I don't know. Or when, yes, Lori?
Some people may have more freedom than others.
That is correct. So Lori said some people may have more freedom than others. Can you flesh that out a little bit more?
Perhaps if I lived in another country, I wouldn't be allowed to operate an automobile or vote or own property or make my own choices
Right.
or worship.
Yes. Right.
Lots of different
Yeah, so Lori's talking about different forms of oppression that people experience and looking at other people who have the freedom and the privilege to do things differently. And some of those things, yeah, the grass is greener somewhere else. Like if your country has been at war forever and ever, yeah, someplace else probably looks pretty good. We have a mission team that's going to Lebanon from the Presbytery, and they work with a group of schools for the refugees coming in from Syria. And that is a place where you can go and actually see what this terrible war has done, and to see the children who just want to be loved and have a safe place to go, and how there are many of us who do have a safe place to go. And we don't really think about it that much, or I'll put it on myself, I don't think about it that much. But that's a really good point. And that's another reason why it's good to pay attention to where some people might be sensitive about certain things, or maybe vulnerable, I guess is a better word. So as we proceed forward, we're going to Akron Pride. We're going to have a booth there. And so there's a chance that we might get some folks who have been severely wounded by the church, right? And so wanting to create a place for them where they can find green grass. The song we sang, the song Rob sang this morning, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, I know Samuel probably said that about 10 times, like maybe even in the Pentecostal style, Precious Lord, take my hand, there on my left nerve. But then also, be thou my vision. You know, when we sing that song and we talk about God being our vision, and the Israelites were singing, a king will be our vision, a king will be our vision. But they got the king and stuff went bad, and the story's really, really good, but for now we have to let it be to be continued. Please pray with me. God, we thank you that you are steadfast and loving, and that you care for us like no one else. Help us to remember that we don't need anything else that other people have, that you hold us and provide for us and keep us all in your hands. Amen.